Anime and manga are littered with all sorts of tropes, one of which I covered in one of the previous videos going over the trope of the strongest, as portrayed in Jujutsu Kaisen and Bleach. This time I want to tackle another one of these tropes across a wider variety of manga than in that video. The trope in question is the mad scientist. It is one of my favorite tropes and makes for very interesting and compelling characters. It provides some moral ambiguity than other character types and overall adds an extra layer of depth to the media it inhabits. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and ring that bell so you can be notified every time I upload. Also, be sure to click the link to the Discord in the description below to join a growing and fun community. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. Mayuri Kurotsuchi is the captain of Squad 12 in Bleach, and my personal favorite cap. Ever since his introduction in chapter 120, I have been fascinated with his character. We are introduced to Mayuri with him blowing up his own subordinates with bombs that, let's be honest, they probably didn't know were in them. After Orihime uses Santen Kishun to block the aforementioned explosion, Mayuri is intrigued and offers Orihime an opportunity to become a research subject. Being a research subject for Mayuri includes things like a daily drug regimen of 8 doses, 5 hours of biochemical experiments, giving clothing while you sleep, and him trying not to perform any modifications that would kill you. And these are more than favorable offers in his opinion, showing just how sadistic he truly is. To add to his sadistic nature, he was more than willing to slice through Nimue in order to hit Ryu, and when Nimue asked for healing, he began stomping on her as he finds it insulting that she would insinuate he didn't make her durable enough. Even his Zanpakuto is sadistic, injecting a poison into the opponent that paralyzes them but still allows them to feel pain. Speaking of his Zanpakuto, Mayuri experiments on that as well, which in the context of Bleach is insane. We are told that once a Bankai is broken, the Zanpakuto can never be healed. This does not apply to Ashisoki Jizo. Mayuri has his Bankai split down the middle by Uryu in their fight and is still capable of using it the next time we see him fighting. This is because of the experimentation he performs on it. He views his Zanpakuto, an extension of his soul and its own being in its own right, as just another research subject, which shouldn't be surprising at all given that Mayuri has performed a multitude of experiments on his own body. Mayuri is a true scientist, viewing every fight as a collection of data and an opportunity to test out his latest drug or gadget. Things like a healing serum, surveillance bacterium, a post-cognition drug that traps you in a time loop, a superhuman drug that makes every second seem like a century without your body being able to keep up, and his magnum opus, the Nimue Project, creating artificial life from practically nothing, and that life developing and growing its own consciousness and abilities all on her own. A truly astonishing feat. His keen observation and deduction skills are that of a great scientist as well. After reports of Quincy's being near shadows during the invasion, he correctly deduces they live in some sort of shadow realm. Or when he perfectly explains Giselle's the zombie ability with next to no evidence. Kyoraku himself states that Mayuri can come up with a solution to any problem given one day of prep and a few pieces of data. Mayuri's views can be summed up by his own words when fighting Zyle Opero Grans in his famous perfection speech. Zyle wanted to become perfect, and Mayuri detested that so much he didn't even consider Zyle a scientist. Mayuri goes on to say that he spits on perfection, that it leaves no room for further knowledge and abilities, that perfection brings only despair for scientists such as them. This speech solidifies Mayuri's worldview and place as a mad scientist in my book. Dr. Frankenstein from Soul Eater is one of my all-time favorite characters, period. I love everything about the character. His design, his fighting style, his nonchalant demeanor, and most of all, how much of a sadistic scientist he is. Stein is a bit more moral than Mayuri, but not by much. We are introduced to Stein all the way back in chapter 1 of Soul Eater, when Maka, Soul, Blackstar, and Tsubaki are on a remedial mission. From the jump, we see Stein as a scientist. Stein was the one who turned Sid, another teacher at DWMA, into a zombie. zombie. Maka asks him why he has been attacking DWMA students, and he replies that it is simply observation and research and nothing more. He goes on to say that to him, everything in the world is a research subject, including himself. He views the fight as an experiment, and in this chapter it is revealed that Stein was the former partner of Spirit, Maka's father, who Stein conducted experiments on while asleep. During the fight, he is able to disarm Maka and then begins to mark on her with a marker, wondering where to put the scalpel first, and that he will turn her skin into sandpaper. This introduction into Stein is also the introduction into one of his largest character traits, the urge to dissect. In this same fight, we are shown that Stein can attack with his soul wavelength directly like Blackstar. However, unlike Blackstar, he is much more proficient with it and has a vastly deeper understanding of souls. He is able to tell the personalities of the souls he observes with his soul perception, which Maka claims ranks him among the best of Meisters, a sentiment shared by Lord Death at the beginning of this fight. The power of his soul perception, in conjunction with his scientific mind geared to research, observation, and experimentation, gives Stein an extremely flexible soul wavelength. So flexible, in fact, that after only viewing Blackstar's soul data once, Stein is able to perfectly match the characteristics of Blackstar's soul wavelength and cancel out his attack. Now, it's revealed that at the end of this fight, this was all a part of the remedial lesson, and that Stein has actually been brought in as a teacher at DWMA. But the personality that Stein demonstrated was truly his own, especially the dissection part. It is shown in more casual and comical moments, like when Stein demonstrates his dissection of an endangered species of bird for the class. However, in a far more serious situation against the Demon Sword Master Krona, after stabilizing Soul Evans, who Krona had critically injured, and then witnessing the black blood in combat, Stein comments on how he can't wait to dissect Krona. This plays heavily into the scientist aspect of his character, as the black blood is the project of the witch Medusa, who is a mad scientist in her own right. It's like a parallel of how scientists peer review the work of other scientists. Much like Mayuri, Stein's deductive reasoning is top tier in his verse. He was the first one to discover that Medusa was a witch while she was posing as a nurse at DWMA. His suspicions probably started after Erika and Mizune confronted Medusa in an alleyway and released their soul protect. This caused Maka and Stein to rush to the scene. Maka asks if it was the same witch that put the demon sword Ragnarok inside of Krona. Medusa agrees it could be, but Stein immediately shuts this down. He then confronts Medusa in the nurse's office, hinting at the fact that she is probably a witch, and then again at the DWMA anniversary celebration while the two are dancing. This is when he blatantly calls her out. Medusa's first instinct is to try to appeal to Stein's scientific mind in an attempt to bring him over to her side. In a speech reminiscent of Mayuri's perfection speech, Medusa claims that the Kishin is evolution itself, and that the DWMA is acting as a deterrent to that power, a power she claims moves the world forward. She asks Stein if he would want to live in a monotonous world where nothing ever changes. She is trying to appeal to his nature as a scientist. This obviously doesn't work, but Medusa is one of the more intelligent and cunning people in the verse. Her enacting such a strategy speaks to how deep this aspect of Stein's character goes. She would try the same exact tactic again when fighting Stein a few chapters later, where we see the Kishin's madness bringing out Stein's true nature. At that point, all he wants to do is dissect Medusa. Even after losing in the end, as the Kishin is revived, he can't help but revel in tearing Medusa apart. A child prodigy, one of the legendary Sannin of the Leaf, and the reincarnation of the White Snake, Orochimaru was practically destined for greatness. However, he would walk down a much different path. Inspired by his sensei Hiruzen, who knew every jutsu in the Leaf, Orochimaru would aim to learn every jutsu in the ninja world, and would go to any lengths to achieve this goal, including dissecting innocent people in an effort to attain the power he sought after. Orochimaru states that he has surpassed Hiruzen by the time he fights him during the Konoha invasion, alluding to just how many jutsu he knows. Orochimaru strives to achieve immortality and has created a body-swapping jutsu to prolong his life. His main goal is to acquire the body of an Uchiha to gain access to the Sharingan, which would allow him to better understand and break down jutsu. He first attempts this on Itachi, but once the power gap between them is demonstrated, he sets his sights on Sasuke. This leads into another one of his experiments, the Curse Mark. The Curse Mark is a mix of the user's chakra and Orochimaru's